Hari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhagavad-gita Ashtottara Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bhagavad-gita Ashtottara Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Okay, it's heated up pretty good in here. Does anyone, do each of you know how to turn that off? Very good, Chad. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oh, please don't put it on the floor. And you can sit by one of these here. Anyone here, close by, because it's, yeah, a little bit too remote over there. Take a book, yeah? Okay. All right. Oops. On this 6th day of December, 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are still studying Chapter 3, Karma Yoga. And we're on text 34 at the top of page 170. Indriyasyendriyasyarte Raga Dveshau Vyavastitau Tayor Navasham agachet tau hi asya paripantinau indriyasyandriyasyarte ragadvesha vyavastitau tayo navashamagachet tau yasya 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 paripantinau. You want to try it? I guess not. Oh, you can't see. Okay. Anyone online? No. Okay. I'll read the synonyms myself. Indriyasya, of the senses. Indriyasya arte, in the sense objects. Raga, attachment. Dvesha, also detachment. Vyavastitau, put under regulations. Tayo, of them. Na, never. Vasham, control. Agachet, one should come. Tau, those, he, certainly. Asya, his. Paripantinau, stumbling blocks. Okay. Translation. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion, because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Purport. Those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. But those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement. But one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by the sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul, and sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties. According to scriptural injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any women other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mother. But in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise they will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations. And yet, we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. One has to follow those rules and regulations unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray, as much as there is always the chance of an accident, even on the royal roads. Although they may be very carefully maintained, no one can guarantee that there will be no danger even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very long time. It's a very long time, owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all means. But attachment to Krishna consciousness, or acting always in the loving service of Krishna, detaches one from all kinds of sensory activities. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. The whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. So, this is Krishna speaking this verse in the context of people who want to lead a pious life, and they're not really interested in very great austerity and renunciation at this point, but they want to be moral and follow the Vedic injunctions. So the purpose of the Vedic injunctions in this context is to regulate this sense gratification, because the understanding is that to become too absorbed in sense gratification is very dangerous for the soul. We learned from Lord Rishabhdev, Nunam pramatta kurate vikarma yadindriya pritaya apranoti. That is certainly true that someone who's simply focused on sense gratification is mad. Nunam pramatta means mad, very mad. Because why? Tatsadamanye nunam pramatta kurate vikarma nunam pramatta kurate vikarma yadindriya pritaya apranoti nasadumanye yata atmanoyam. I don't think it's very wise, because by that activity, asannapi Kṛṣṇa asadeha, you're sure to get another body, which is absolutely going to bring you so much suffering. So you may get a little titillation and fleeting pleasures in this life, but then you'll be faced with a lot of suffering in the next life or lives. So even on just a calculation of what's a better investment, what's the best way in order to minimize our suffering in this world, one should follow these regulations. And he uses the words here, raga and dvesha. Now raga and dvesha means attachment and aversion. Prabhupada mentioned detachment here, but I think that's been changed. Dvesha is not detachment. Detachment is what we want. That's vairagya. But this is aversion, which is just the flip side of attachment. The things that we're averse to, we need to learn how to tolerate without being disturbed. Yes?
Aversion kind of has the taste of a negative.
Exactly. Right. It's right. Aversion is also something we have to conquer.
Or detachment is just...
Detachment means you're neutral, and if someone allures you to sense gratification, you can resist it. And if something is threatening you misery, or even you're undergoing it, then you're tolerant, but you remain equipoised. That's the ideal. In Raga Dvesha. In the second chapter, there's an important verse, a series of verses. You may recall, this. I think it's 260, 61, or 61, 62. He says, how's it go? Oh God, I hate it when that happens. I have to review these verses more. But this is a series of verses how the living entity gets entrapped. It starts out 62. Dhyayato, meditating on Jayato Vishayanasya Sangasteshu Bhajayate. Sangat Sanjayate Kama, Kama Kroda Vijayate. Krodad Babadi Sangmoha, Sammohat Smriti Vibrama. Smriti Brangshad Buddhi Nasho, Buddhi Nasha Panashiti. Once I get the first word, it kind of flows. So Dhyayato comes from Dhyaya, to meditate upon, to become absorbed in. The Vishayas, the objects of the senses. As I pointed out in many classes, this is the whole object of advertising. To bring before your senses, your eyes and your ears basically, something that they think will grab your attention. Oh, this is something that they want, and we're going to try to convince them that this is the best way, buying our product, to fulfill that desire. That's what, So they want you to meditate on it. They want you to be absorbed in whatever they're presenting so that the message will get through. So if you accommodate that and you become absorbed in some sense object, Vishayam, then attachment grows up in your heart. I want to have it. I want to enjoy. Dhyayado Vishayan Pungsa. And that's Sangha, that's attachment. Sangha has the meaning of association and attachment. Why? Because what you associate with, you become attached to. So this is a Sanskrit word. Sangas teshu bhajayate, and that produces attachment. Sangat sanjayate kama, when it becomes more and more inflamed, is called kama, means a very strong desire to enjoy. And then eventually that desire is frustrated. It becomes satiated, and you can't fulfill it. So then you become angry. Someone else is taking your object of sense gratification, or you're not getting enough paid where you can enjoy what you really want. Whatever it is frustrating. That's krodad. Krodad bhavati sammoha. What does it say here? That's the second verse, 63. Complete bewilderment. And anger can completely change you, so you do something you regret the rest of your life, right? So sammoha, you become completely bewildered. Sammohat smriti vibhrama, you lose your memory, you forget who you are and everything, and you do something. And smriti bhrangshat buddhi nasho, and if you keep doing that, then your intelligence gets destroyed. And buddhi nasha panashati, then you fall down again in the material pool, as he said. So what's the cure for that? The 64 gives you how you can avoid this. Here's recognize this? Raga dvesha. Begins with that. Raga dvesha vimuktaistu vishayan indriyaischadan atmavasya videyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Here's how they get the prasadam, not the food that we eat, but the grace of the Lord. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So the key is to embrace those regulative principles of freedom, and it's not just the four regs. These are the principles of bhakti, of getting the higher taste, so that you can restrain yourself when the allurements to enjoy are there, and you can be equipoised when there's some unpleasant thing happens. You don't get thrown. You're free of raga and dvesha. You're equipoised. Vishayan, even when moving, even when the senses are presented with the sense objects, Vishayan indriyaischaran. This is the real key. And we saw that with Prabhupada. He had to endure so many difficulties when he came, in the early days, and even threats. There were several threats to his life. When he went to Calcutta for the first Pandal, the Naxalites were there, from India, Naxalites. So they didn't like the devotees, because they were communists, and so they thought that was their territory. So they got a note to Prabhupada, fly or die, and they came to the Pandal. There's a story about it in the Lilamrit, I think I read it. And so Prabhupada didn't show any fear. He invited them in, told the devotees to give him some nice seats. I don't know if they gave him prasadam or not, I think that came later. But then he started playing the Brahma Samhita pairs. Someone was playing the tambour and he was singing, So these, they're Naxalites, but they grew up in the culture, in Bengal, and so they recognize it. So they were kind of disarmed, And then Prabhupada, the genius that he was, if you know his preaching, he called Varnashram like spiritual communism, because they're communists, And the same theme, I like to point out, I was trained as a communist when I was a kid back in the 50s, 60s by my father. So one of the few things I remember from Das Kapital is from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. This is the socialist ideal. The state is running everything, and they're like a very caring father, they're supposed to be, and they engage everyone in work that suits them, which is the Varna ashram ideal, and then they give them what they need for prosperity, for a prosperous life. So what do we do in Krishna consciousness? You come, and you give whatever you can to Krishna, and and you're provided for. You get the prasadam, in the old days you move in, and so it's like that Krishna will provide. He says, "Yoga kshema vahamyaham." To those who are always thinking about me, then and devoting their lives to me, I provide what they need. I preserve what they have. The kshema is the protection, security. The yoga in this context means the things that you need to live, the necessities of life. I provide the necessities of life and your security. This is part of surrender. The 6 principles of surrender. Anukulyasya sankalpa, patikulyasya varjanam, Rakshishyati iti vishwaso gopit vepadarang tata atmaniksepa karpane shadvada sharanagati. It's sharanagati. Sharan is a thing. So the first thing is to accept things that are favorable for Krishna consciousness. Do chant 16 rounds. Do get up early in the morning. Do come to Mangalarti. Do this and this and this. So the more you can accept, then that's an act of surrender. And particularly Yasavarjanam. Give up those things that are detrimental. The 4 regs are there and so many other things. So that's true of any discipline that you want to engage in to achieve a goal, you know. You have to accept certain things and reject certain things. So that's accepting the favorable, rejecting the unfavorable. That's the first two. Rakshishyatiti vishvaso, to be confident of Krishna's protection, you know, that he will protect. Just like the residents of Vrindavan. So many threats, so many demons, you know, the Govardhan pastime with Indra with the brains. What did they do? They always called out to Krishna helplessly. Oh, Krishna, save us, you know. And he did. He saved them so miraculously in that case and so many other cases. And also maintenance. That means that he will also maintain you in your daily life. Even if you sacrifice so much and you become renounced, he will provide what you need to survive, you know. And then Atmanikshepta Karpanye, and always remain meek and humble, and to have no other aspiration but to satisfy Krishna. These are 6 things. So that's what he's describing here in the text 64. So what this verse says at the end there is that raga dvesha vimukta, one can remain free of raga and dvesha if you accept the regulative principles of freedom, which is like all the principles, not just the four regs. It's interesting because regular principles means to be something to curb your freedom. But no, it's for your own good. In other words, it's giving you the spiritual strength to stay right, to be equipoised in raga and dvesha, and be able to, all of these do's and don'ts. That's the regular principles of freedom, because by restraining the senses and learning to control, you become free of the control of the material sense objects and all these different things. You know, you can say no, I don't need that, and along with all of this comes the higher taste. In other words, that's the key. By practicing Krishna consciousness, you get the higher taste, so that the things that used to be controlling you because you say, no, I don't need them anymore. Like Yamunacharya, I think of all, you know, because he was a king, but then he was a great sage, and when I think of all his sex life, I just spit at the thought, you know, that I had. You know, it's not something that disturbs my mind. It's okay, forget it. You know. So that's what we're talking about here. And that's, okay, so we're on text 34. So it's the same idea. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. Now, it's a little different here because these are principles that are not necessarily intrinsic to bhakti. These are like Vedic principles. And that's why in the purport, Prabhupada said one should not get attached to the sense gratification that is available, you know, the so-called legal sense gratification. Even that will keep you entangled, you know. But that's certainly better than just letting the senses run riot. So if you're part of the Vedic culture, okay, then do everything in a regulated way, but aspire at a certain point to increase your natural vairagya so that you don't remain attached to even the regulated sense. That's what he's talking about here. All right, so we go on? Unless there's a comment or question. 35. Shreyan swadharmo viguna padadharmat swanushthitat swadharme nidanam shreya padadharmo bhayavaha. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Purport. One should therefore discharge his prescribed duties in full Krishna consciousness, rather than those prescribed for others. Materially, prescribed duties are duties enjoined according to one's psychophysical condition, under the spell of the modes of material nature. Spiritual duties are as ordered by the spiritual master for the transcendental service of Krishna. But whether material or spiritual, one should stick to his prescribed duties, even up to death, rather than imitate another's prescribed duties. Duties on the spiritual platform and duties on the material platform may be different, but the principle of following the authorized direction is always good for the performer. When one is under the spell of the modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others. For example, a Brahmin who is in the mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for a Kshatriya it is better to be vanquished following the rules of violence than to imitate a Brahmin who follows the principles of non-violence. Because this is what Arjuna was trying to do. He was, he wanted to give up the fighting and go and become a mendicant, but he wasn't suited for that. Everyone has to cleanse his heart by a gradual process, not abruptly. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. In that complete stage of Krishna consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as a Brahman, or a Brahman may act as a Kshatriya. In the transcendental stage, the distinctions of the material world do not apply. For example, Vishwamitra was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahman, whereas Parashuram was a Brahman, but later on he acted as a Kshatriya. Being transcendentally situated, they could do so. But as long as one is on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. At the same time, he must have a full sense of Krishna consciousness. So this is again the idea of being careful to try to abruptly change your situation when it's dangerous to do that. In the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada talks about the dangers of over-endeavor. And he says, okay, now I'm just going to retire, go to Vrindavan, I'll sit under a tree and I'll chant 64 rounds a day in this way. But you're not suited to it. You become restless, and you're thinking, oh, I better go back, to leave Vrindavan entirely, go back. In other words, we have to carefully monitor our progress so that we don't try to bite off more than we can chew, so to speak, and then become discouraged. And then we discouraged and give up the process altogether. So, Prabhupada, he engineered this movement in that way so that someone can come and, perform, simple tasks. In the old days in the temple was always something to do, And then they introduced book distribution, and it was like, an hour a day, something like that. In other words, you take it easy. But what he really emphasized in those days was Harinam, which anyone can participate in and make, become so confirmed in Krishna consciousness, because you get a higher taste that way so easily. So that, that should be an intrinsic part of every temple, really, that, in emphasizing chant. That's why those who are experienced in the Mangalartik here, that we, because I've been here so long, I kind of set some of the standards, just unwilling, because I just do them. And that was that we don't repeat each verse of the Gurvastika. My standard is repeat 1 and 5 and 8. But the others we go through, because I want to maximize the time we have to chant Hare Krishna. Because we're not all going out every day, like we used to be. When I joined, everyone went out at least 3 hours a day on Harinam. And in the early days, they would chant all day, basically. The LA devotees said, yes, we would go out in the morning, come back for lunch, go out again, come back for dinner, go out again, come back at 12, and then get up at 7 in the morning. This was before Mangalarti. But they were chanting like anything. And Vishnu Jan was there, and everyone was just getting blissed out so much. They would have devotees joining every day. Dhanavir Maharaj tells in the old days. When Prabhupada came, he lived there for 8 months in 1970. He never stayed anywhere else that long, in the West or anywhere. And it was just unbelievable. So much Harinam going on, people joining, books going out, and Prabhupada thought, this is ideal. I'll just stay here and I'll write, because he has the management covered and everything. But it wasn't to be. Krishna had other plans, because India was calling. He hadn't really done anything in India yet. Because his order was to preach in the West. He got that from Bhaktisiddhanta. But then something developed. It was some of his devotees they started to intercept his mail and everything, and so he wanted to leave LA, and he called up some of his main managers, Tamal Krishna Maharaj and some others, and get me out of here, So it happened, yeah. And later on, Prabhupada said that he was talking to Krishna and said, I really want to stay here, but Krishna, Rukmini Dwarkadish, would tell him, no, we want you to go to India, and preach there. And that's how the whole thing started. He, in 70, he told a bunch of the temples, I don't know, maybe the 25 temples at that point, maybe a few more, they assign a few devotees to come to India. And that's how Giriraj Swami went, and Yamuna went, and Garuda, and they all, I think the three couples who were there in England, they all went. And they had this party, they were doing pandals. Shyama Sundar was a great promoter. He put a big balloon, had never been seen before, in downtown Bombay, the pandals coming at this time in this place, and thousands of people came to hear Prabhupada. And see the Dancing White Elephants. That book is coming out. He's writing now. So that, so Prabhupada, and he saw there's a tremendous field here, and so India now is 3/4 of the movement is there now. All right, we're going to now launch into this next portion, which is so critical in the Gita, from 36 to the end, the effect of kama, of lust, on the consciousness of the soul. Arjuna Vacha Atakena Prayukto Yam Papam Charati Purushaha Anichan Api Varshneya Balad Ivaniyojitaha. Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Purport. A living entity, as part and parcel of the Supreme, is originally spiritual, pure, and free from all material contaminations. Therefore, by nature, he is not subject to the sins of the material world. But when he is in contact with the material nature, he acts in many sinful ways without hesitation, and sometimes even against his will. As such, Arjuna's question to Krishna is very sanguine, means very appropriate, pertinent, as to the perverted nature of the living entities. Although the living entity sometimes does not want to act in sin, he is still forced to act. Sinful actions are not, however, impelled by the supersoul within, but are due to another cause, as the Lord explains in the next verse. All right, so let's get the mystery, solve the mystery. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidjenam Hyabaidinam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Purport. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion. Or, in other words, the sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust as milk in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. So Prabhupada is referencing those verses we read, how from lust turns into anger, anger turns into illusion, like that, deep delusion. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity. Now, lust refers to any powerful desire, not just sex desire. That's clear. Lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath, which is powerful anger. Wrath is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If, therefore, the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many for his ever-increasing spiritual bliss, and the living entities are parts and parcels of that spiritual bliss. They also have partial independence. But by misuse of their independence, when the service attitude is transformed into the propensity for sense enjoyment, they come under the sway of lust. This material creation is created by the Lord to give facility to the conditioned souls to fulfill their lustful propensities, and when completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their real position. This inquiry is the beginning of the Vedanta Sutras, wherein it is said, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, one should inquire into the Supreme. And the Supreme is defined in Srimad Bhagavatam as Janmadyasya Yatonvayadi Tadatascha, or the origin of everything is the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, the origin of lust is also in the Supreme. If therefore lust is transformed into love for the Supreme, or transformed into Krishna consciousness, or in other words, desiring everything for Krishna, then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. Hanuman, the great servitor of Lord Ram, exhibited his wrath by burning the golden city of Ravana. But by doing so, he became the greatest devotee of the Lord. Here also, in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord induces Arjuna to engage his wrath upon his enemies for the satisfaction of the Lord. Therefore, lust and wrath, when they are employed in Krishna consciousness, become our friends instead of our enemies. So, this is very illuminating here. So these verses are, I always, when I first read them, I said, oh, this is really what we have to understand, because we're all more or less controlled by material desire. That's why we're here in the material world. So what to do with that material desire, how to purify our desire, that's the whole essence of Krishna consciousness. To turn back toward Krishna. We turned away from him eons ago, and we've been absorbed in the material energy in all sorts of species, trying to dominate, trying to enjoy, and been suffering like anything, birth after birth. So the whole key is purifying our desire. And the most efficacious process, especially in this age, is the chanting of the holy name. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam. Kalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatiranyata. If you want to achieve the supreme goal of life, in this age, when dissension and chaos abound, there is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way that can ever be found but to chant Krishna's name, but to chant Krishna's name, but to chant Krishna's name with a stout-hearted vow, and to pray, O Lord Krishna, O friend of the poor, let my head ever unto your lotus feet bow. So it's important to understand the subtle workings of our mind, intelligence, and ego, because the whole thing depends on that. The vehicle for transmigration and staying entangled in this world is the mind, intelligence, and ego. When we act on our human birth in a way that is simply dictated by the uncontrolled senses or the anger or all of the material modes of passion, then all of that is affecting our subtle body, our mind, intelligence, and ego. The unfulfilled desires, the karma is we're doing things that are, sure to bring us another body, another birth, not so auspicious as human. And so learning how to engage the senses and the mind and the intelligence in the service of Krishna for their purification is the way that we can become liberated and go back to Godhead. And that process is given to us by the Acharyas, by the Srimad Bhagavatam, by the Bhagavad Gita. And so if we are fortunate enough to come in contact with that and adopt the principles, that's the key here is the regulative principles of freedom, then this karma, as Prabhupada mentions here in the purport, can be purified and become prema again. There's a nice verse in the 4th chapter, Adi Lila, where he contrasts kama and prema. Atmandriya piti vancha tare bale tare kam, Krishnendriya piti itcha dare prem nam. The desire to satisfy one's own senses is kama, and the desire to satisfy Krishna's senses is prema. So how to transform that? Because one is very wholesome and one is very self-destructive. Well, that is the process of bhakti, and it all begins with shraddha. Shraddha. Now, this is faith. And in the famous verses by Rupa Goswami delineating the passage from faith to love, faith to prema, beginning with shraddha, he says, Ādau shraddha, tatak sadhu sangha, the bhajana kriya. So in the association of devotees, one becomes inspired to perform bhajan, bhajana kriya. Hare Krishna, welcome. We'll have darshan in a few minutes. So Ādau shraddha. Now where does that faith come from? It comes from some contact with the devotee. It can be out in the park somewhere, or the beach, you get a book, and you get in contact with the greatest devotee, Srila Prabhupada. By reading Prabhupada's books, you get interested. You may be interested in visiting the temple, you see. So there's some faith there that there's something of interest, there's something of value. A preliminary faith. This is preliminary interest and respect, he says. Ādau shraddha. And it brings you into the association of devotees. Now, we know very well that the temples are, we're fortunate to be, I'm so fortunate to be near a temple, three minute walk from a temple. Some people are, a 3 hour drive from a temple, or even more remote. But by the miracle of electronics, you hit the right keys and you can still get association, through books and so forth. So somehow or other you want to be interested in that association, and by that association, sadhu sangha at the bhajana, you become inspired to perform some bhajan, just like our Bhakta Noah here. I remember when he first came, and he was listening, and then I saw him with a bead bag. He's chanting in front of Prabhupada, 2 rounds a day. He's chanting his 2. So that's it. He's following the process. So bhajana kriya. Now, if you're serious and you practice more and more, then you come up to 16 and you finally decide, I really want to get initiated at a certain point. So that's part of the process, and it goes on. By bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti is taking place. The impurities in the heart, cheto darpana marjanam, the process of sankirtan cleanses the mirror of the heart, right, of the mind. So that purification is going on, and as it does, you come to the point of nishta. Nishta is firm faith, and that faith is defined by Lord Chaitanya when in his instructions to Sanatana Goswami. He says, Shraddha shabde vishwas kohe sudridha nishtoy Krishna bhakti korle sarva karma krita hoy. The Bengali. Shabde, this word shabde is used as like an idiom in Bengali, means this is the definition of Shraddha. Shraddha shabde vishwas kohe, the very firm determination, unshakable vishwas is kohe is said to be firm determination to what? That just by practicing Krishna consciousness, all my aspirations will be fulfilled. This is all I need to do. Krishna bhakti korle sarva karma krita hoy. All my activities will find their fruition. It's very important space to have. And as you engage in devotional service on that platform, you get more and more ruchi. Nishvaso, let's say, Ādau shraddha tatak sadhu sangha, the bhajana kriya, tato narta nibidisat, tato nishta ruchi stata. Ruchi means the taste. Now that ruchi is not just waiting for you to come all the way to nishta. Even the preliminary stages, you get some taste. The taste is there, but the taste becomes much more reliable and intense when you get to the nishta. And you're not interested in material things anymore. You really. And so that ruchi gradually matures into asakta, actual attraction for Krishna. And that matures into bhava, which matures into prema. So the ladder from shraddha to prema is important to know. We should try to think, am I actually going up the ladder fast enough, So understanding this section that we just are reading now is really important. It's foundational for what's happening. The kama, we're trying to purify the kama so that it's going to become prema. Our desires will be purified. And we can read about it, and so many great devotees went through that. Ajamil, Ajamil was the story. he was a Brahmin, you know, and he got distracted in the forest, and he fell down, and he married a prostitute, and his whole life he was, you know, he was leading a sinful life, basically. And then, but he still remembered his upbringing, and then when the time of his death came, and he had a little son who he wisely named Narayan, so he sees the Yamadutas, and he calls out, Narayan, Narayan, you know, and then the Narayana Dutas come and save him from being ripped out of his body and taken off Yamaraj. And then there's a whole discussion, the power of the holy name. So that holy name is our salvation in this age. The more that we become serious in chanting, the more that we'll get a taste for chanting, and then through that chanting, everything in relation to Krishna becomes tasty. And so we should understand that that's what we should cultivate. There's a prayer. You know, there was a movie a long time ago, many years ago, that I saw. Maybe I think it was a Karmi. And one of the themes is greed is good. It was about this guy in the stock market. You know, the stock market runs on greed. You know, otherwise. So that's also true for us. Not greed for money, but greed for Krishna. You know, there's a verse. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitam ati kriyatam yadikatopi labhyate tatta laulyam api mulyam ekalam janmakoti sukatayana labhyate. It's a very famous verse. Ramananda Roy is speaking to Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya is taking the role of the student. And Ramananda Roy is the guru. He was reluctant to do it, but Lord Chaitanya, don't worry, you know the science of bhakti better than that. So this is his verse. It says, and Prabhupada took that first line and made the phrase Krishna consciousness out of it. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamati, the mind absorbed in the rasa of Krishna bhakti is Krishna consciousness. If you can buy that, you should. If you find it in the marketplace, you should buy it as quickly as possible. It's your mind absorbed in Krishna bhakti rasa. That's the goal of life, you know. So what's the price? The price is your greed for it. That's the only price. And millions of births of pious activity, you can't buy it. You know, that's it. So how to develop that uncontrollable desire to be Krishna conscious, to serve Krishna, to spread Krishna consciousness, to glorify Krishna, everything that we do, where it becomes a compulsion, you know, that's what we're looking for. In other words, where you can't forget Krishna, you don't want to forget Krishna, you're just looking for ways to serve Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya taught us in the Shikshastika how we should feel, you know. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram, but of course he begins with Trinadapi sunichena, tarorapi sahishnana. More humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree. To think all praise belongs to others, none belongs to me. Such qualities attract the Lord to bless one with the power to chant his name incessantly until the final hour. And then, well, what should we pray for? Nadanam, nadanam, nasundadim, kapitam. Here's what you don't. I don't want wealth, I don't want women, no followers. Wealth and women followers, the fruits of mundane piety, liberation from this world of limitless anxiety. For me, O Lord, these common goals have not the slightest worth. Let me serve you purely now and in each future birth. This is a nishta ruchi. This is an advanced stage. He's just, you know, he's modeling them. And then the next prayer. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavambaldo kripayata papada pankajastita dhuli sabdashang vachintaya. Your servant for eternity. I lost my true identity and fell into this horrid sea of birth and death, O Lord. O Nanda's son, please hear my plea. By your sweet grace, consider me a speck of dust upon your lotus feet forevermore. So when we're chanting, we can, you know, it's said that we should try to chant the Shikshastika every day. And that for one who does, you progress nicely to prema. The Shikshastika was not written as an ashtaka. It was written the verses were written at different times by Lord Chaitanya, and they appear throughout the Padyavali, which is Rupa Goswami's own nectar file, his favorite verses. And my understanding of Krishna's Kaviraj is when they pull them out and put them in that order, and there is a progression, you know, of the order. So that's it's good to study that, because that's really the foundation of this whole movement, this Shikshastika. Well, it's 8:04. If there are no questions or comments, we can go on. I think we read, did we read 37? Yes. Okay, let's read 38. Dume navrete vanir yatadarsho malena cha yatolbe navrato garbhas tatate nedamavratam As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Purport: there are 3 degrees of covering of the living entity by which his pure consciousness is obscured. This covering is but lust under different manifestations, like smoke in the fire, dust on the mirror, and the womb about the embryo. When lust is compared to smoke, it is understood that the fire of the living spark can be a little perceived. In other words, when the living entity exhibits his Krishna consciousness slightly, he may be likened to the fire covered by smoke. Although fire is necessary where there is smoke, there is no overt manifestation of fire in the early stage. This stage is like the beginning of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror refers to a cleansing process of the mirror, of the mind, by so many spiritual methods. The best process is to chant the holy names of the Lord. The embryo, or fetus, covered by the womb is an analogy illustrating a helpless position, for the child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot even move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to the birds and beasts, and the smoke-covered fire is compared to the human being. In the form of a human being, the living entity may revive a little Krishna consciousness, and if he makes further development, the fire of spiritual life can be kindled in the human form of life. By careful handling of the smoke and the fire can be made to blaze. Therefore, the human form of life is a chance for the living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy, lust, by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. Haribol. So this is Prabhupada's giving us this essential information. It's all a question of clearing the mirror of the mind, getting attached to hearing about Krishna. You know, the second chapter, the Dharma, the way of transcendence. And you get to the last 5 verses, and he's giving the climax of the point. He says, Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shabana Kirtanaha Riddan Daksto Yabhadrani Bidunoti Suritsatam. When one has an ardent desire to hear about Krishna and is hearing, then Krishna in the heart, he understands. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shabana Kirtana, hearing vibrations, pure vibrations about Krishna, which automatically bring one piety, Punya Shabana, to hear and chant. Ridyan Daksto Yabhadrani, Krishna, who is situated in the heart, he cleanses away the abundras, the unwanted things, the lust, the anger, the greed, the illusion, all those things. He himself is doing that. Yabhadrani Vidunoti literally means cleansing. Surit Satam, Krishna, who is the best friend of the devotees. He's the best friend of everyone. Surit, but the devotees can appreciate it. You know. And then what happens? Nashta Prayesha Badreshu. Sound familiar? I chanted it before every Bhagavatam class. Nashta Prayesha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavadgita Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance and classes in Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious in the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So it's not an action that he used the word Uttama Shloka, which means he who is glorified in the most beautiful verses, because it's all about hearing about Krishna. So what happens then? Tadadadastamo bhava kama rabhabhadayasche cheta eta anavidam stitam sattve prasiditi. Then the modes of passion and ignorance and their corollaries, lust and greed, they become less and less controlling you. You can become free of them. You become in the mode of goodness. Stitam sattve prasiditi, fixed in the mode of goodness, and then you're beginning to experience pure goodness. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavad tattva vijnana mukta sangasya jayate. And as you progress, you become naturally joyful. You're like on the Brahma Bhuta platform all the time. Prasanna manaso, by bhagavad bhakti yogataha, by practicing devotional service to Bhagavan. Bhagavad tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. And you get direct experience. It's not just knowledge, but it's vijnan, experience knowledge. Bhagavad tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. And you're free of all attachment. What's that? Oh, okay. Yeah, we're running out of time now. That's the only thing. And then finally, Vidyate vidya grantis chidjante sabha sankshaya chiyante jasikamani driste vatmanishit. And then what happens at that stage, all of the knots in the heart are cut asunder, all the doubts are destroyed, and when all one's karma becomes destroyed, one sees oneself in one's Swarup Siddhi, and one also sees Krishna in the heart. This is progression, all beginning with hearing and chanting. Okay, quick question.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, thank you for the class, Prabhuji. There's been some places that I've been where they, like some people aren't able to attend Mangalarti or Bhagavad Gita class because of their seva and stuff like this. So I'm wondering, is it enough to just hear like over like a speaker or when you're at home listening to the classes, or is it preferable to attend in person?
Yeah, it's preferable to attend. It's always preferable. Prabhupada was very, he emphasized a lot the need for morning and evening classes. That's why I've been doing this class so long, because at least give the opportunity. And it's dangerous to, get so involved in a service that you can't do the classes. You don't have time to come to Mangalarti. You stay up late all the time and you're late, It's because you become unregulated, and that's Maya can come in really easy. It's the regulation, and that really helps the sadhana to become more effective. That's very important. But it's where we are right now. Sometimes we have many people, sometimes we have a few people.
Also, you're not getting the association if you're immersed in the seva. I mean,
and so it's a struggle. But if at all possible, one should try to regulate so you can be at the classes, change around at the same time, and become regulated. Because then the mind, is ready. Oh, now is the time. Okay, let me hear the holy name. All right, we got to adjourn. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. And we will resume on Monday. Where are we? At 39. Okay, this is very useful, actually. I don't know if you'll be in town on Monday, but if you are, the class will take place also.
He's my son.
Oh, Hare Krishna. I didn't know that.